Hello, my name is Matthew, and it's the month of July, and Steve Donahue and I have been having so much fun with our buddy reads that we decided to carry on. And we started with Brideshead Revisited, and then moved to a graphic novel, Batman The Dark Knight Returns, which was a new endeavor for me. Not only is it something that I had never read, I'm uh, very much a novice when it comes to the whole world of comic books and graphic novels and the different universes and all of the craziness that you can find in these superhero storylines. And um, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns ultimately fell apart for me, and I'm really glad that I read it. It's iconic. It's one of those comic books that you'll know about or hear about, even if you're not a big comic book fan. Things like the Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, or The Watchmen, or The Death of Superman. There's a handful of comic books that um, break out of the comic book world and become part of uh, popular culture. Uh, it still was not a satisfying reading experience. The artwork was incredible. Um, the premise was fantastic and interesting. There were many decisions in The Dark Knight Returns that um, the incredible artwork, the original premise, um, could not um, keep the story as a whole above water. It just fell to pieces. And I've talked about what I thought about it. We moved on and read the Iliad by Homer, uh, the great uh, ancient Greek epic poem of um, a small time, a small slice within the long going Trojan War, the story of Achilles and Hector and all of these larger than life characters um, being overseen and moved around by the Greek gods. And it was fantastic. It was great fun to read. And Steve and I decided uh, that we're going to read something for July. And Steve wanted to make it up for me for uh, how disappointing The Dark Knight Returns was, and wanted to pick something that wasn't just a great comic book graphic novel, but a great Batman comic uh, comic book or graphic novel. And he decided on Batman Year One, which is also a Frank Miller comic book. And I'll show you the cover. This is, well, that's not the cover. I don't know where that came from. This is the cover. And this is written by Frank Miller, and the artwork was by David Mazzucchelli. And it says with Richard Lewis. I'm not sure what, or Richmond Lewis. I'm not sure what his involvement was. Richmond Lewis was the colorist. And again, this is broken into 4 parts, and so Steve and I will be reading uh, one part each week. And it's an origin story, or just, as the title implies, the first year that Batman makes his appearance, or Bruce Wayne decides that he wants to become a crime fighter. And the story has 2 parallel storylines. We have Lieutenant Jim Gordon, um, coming into Gotham City, and the comic book is dated, and so let's see, January 4th, and so I imagine this is going to end a year from now on January 4th. It's a specific day that Jim Gordon is coming into Gotham City. He's been hired to become the lieutenant. He's known as a cop from other precincts, from other cities, and he's coming in as a lieutenant. And very smartly, we get a backstory, a fleshed out version of who Lieutenant Gordon is, what his situation is like, what his family life is like, and we spend a lot of time learning about Jim Gordon's first few months in this book. And I thought it was a fantastic decision to parallel Jim Gordon with Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. There's some things that everybody knows about Batman. Parents dying in front of his eyes. He has the Batman costume. He has gadgets, sidekicks, and villains. Something that most people know is that he has some involvement or interaction with the Gotham City police force because of the bat signal. So Jim Gordon at the top of the precinct would light up the bat signal. Everybody knows the bat signal. And so straight away, my first thought is, well, this is going to be amazing. We're not only going to learn about Batman's beginnings, but we're also going to learn about Jim Gordon's first year in Gotham, and how those two lines intersect, because it's such an important part of Batman's identity. We meet this already beaten down, grizzled, pessimistic Jim Gordon. He's really unhappy that he's in Gotham City. He has a wife that's pregnant, and so they're going to have a child, presumably within this series. So like book 3 or 4, there's going to be a birth. And Gotham City is riddled with crime. It's a dangerous, dotty, sketchy, seedy city. And from Jim Gordon's perspective, we also learn that it's a corrupt city. He meets off the train. He meets a detective that is already trying to coerce him and gauging him as to whether or not he's going to play ball. We meet the police commissioner, who seems to just be a mobster, or tied to the mobsters, or in the mobsters' pocket. And when you have a crime-ridden city that's being overseen by a completely corrupt and contemptuous police force, you can see it's just this terrible mix that's going to be like a downward spiral. This is a city with no hope, and this is what Jim Gordon is coming into. We do learn that in his past, at his last wherever he was, his last role as lieutenant, he had fought corruption and had ousted one of the police officers in another city for being corrupt, and so he's a known entity, and it plays a role in this story. He takes a beating. He's not playing ball, and so the other police officers one night just uh, knock him out and beat him up with a bat and leave him just bloody and busted. And this is the world that Jim Gordon is living with and trying to deal with. How is he going to change Gotham City in this environment? And the brilliant thing is that the days match up. So the day that Lieutenant Gordon lands or arrives in Gotham City, Bruce Wayne is now back after it's like 12 or 18 years out of the city. He was abroad, and now Gotham City's richest and most handsome playboy, the heir of the Wayne fortune, is now back in Gotham. And we get these amazing pictures of Bruce Wayne, and he looks like an old-time movie star, like Cary Grant or Clark Gable, or just this perfectly chiseled chin and dark hair, and a really good-looking picture of a man. And we don't get as much of a backstory. We get the hits. We know that his parents died in front of his eyes. He's in Wayne Manor. It's this old time fortune, this old mansion that was built to be a fortress. He has Alfred the butler, who was a trained army medic, and Bruce Wayne is planning on fighting crime. And we learn he spent all those years learning martial arts and fighting techniques and preparing for something, but he's not quite sure what that is. And he knows an important part of whatever his plan is to strike fear. How do you strike fear in the hearts of criminals? But before you even do anything, he wants the city of Gotham to be afraid of his presence. And he goes on a reconnaissance mission. He dresses himself up as a old war veteran. He gives himself a scar on his face, like a prosthetic scar. And I'm not quite sure what he was doing or where he was, but he gets mixed up with a prostitute and a prostitution ring. There's the pimp and like the mistress of it's Selina, like the woman that's running the prostitution ring. And very quickly, things don't go well. He thinks that he's just going to like, kind of moonwalk through this fight, and he gets surprised. He gets stabbed. He gets shot. He gets arrested. He ends up like escaping out of the police car. He's cuffed in the cop car in the back seat, and he breaks the cuffs and does something that has the cop car like run off the road and crash. There's several car crashes throughout this first book, and he barely escapes. He was shot and stabbed. He's all busted up and beaten up, and he barely makes it to his Porsche. And so he's racing home to get back to Wayne Manor and not get caught, somehow recover without anybody knowing, trying to keep his cool, all these things. Lieutenant Gordon, after getting beaten up by, I think it's Detective Lash or Lass, I can't remember, he goes and finds him. There's a poker night, the same night that he was attacked. And one by one, he sees the people that had beaten him up kind of leave drunkenly. And then finally, the person he has his eye on, this detective, is driving down the road. Jim Gordon runs him off the road, uh, gets out, and has his brawl. A lieutenant and a detective in the middle of the night. One's already beaten up. One committed the attack and is drunk from gambling and drinking all night. And Gordon beats the hell out of him, strips him naked, puts the cuffs behind his back, and leaves him naked and handcuffed in the woods. And now Gordon leaves. He's flying down the road. And these stories are synchronized. And so Bruce Wayne nearly has a car accident with Jim Gordon as he's leaving his incident. And he recognizes it. He goes, that's Bruce Wayne. Probably high on cocaine, driving like a maniac. Gordon gets home. Bruce Wayne gets home, crashes into another car, probably a Rolls Royce or something. And Bruce Wayne's like in Wayne Manor, bleeding out, deciding whether or not to call Alfred, deciding on his future. What is he going to do? How is he going to be striking fear? What he did just did not work. It was a bad plan. He has to regroup. We see this big image of a bat breaking through the glass, and it ends with a little bell, so we know he's called for Alfred, he's called for help. And the one thing I haven't touched on or mentioned, which is so important, is the amazing artwork. Just incredible images. And unlike The Dark Knight Returns, where it was full of these really small, dense panels, almost like a really concentrated foam. It was very like hard bubble. It was like a bubbly panel, just full of these little things. This looks much more like how I imagine comic books to look. It's kind of dynamic, different size panels. There's Gordon after he gotten beaten up over here. Look at this amazing, so you can see he's in the red light district, that amazing red. Getting beaten up and Christ. Let me see if I can just find another panel. Look, okay, so that's the end. But look at that. That's what I have to look forward to. He's in the costume. He's wearing the cowl. And yeah, so really enjoying it. It's a great start and a great idea to see how these two figures are going to meet and reconcile their differences, and how with two very different approaches do they come to an amicable agreement for what the problem is. There's a big crime wave, but there's also corruption within the police force. And so Gordon is going to have to learn how to work with Batman, and Batman has to earn the trust of Gordon. All those things. It's great fun. So those are my thoughts, and also a summary of the first book, but very much enjoying it. I'm looking forward to hearing Steve's thoughts, and if you're reading along, let me know what you think of book one, or anything I had to say about it. And thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.